Hello again. How are y'all doing? In my last video, I talked about feeling helpless and like there's not a lot of control in the midst of the coronavirus. In this video, I'm going to sort of talk based on some tweets I've seen and an article I've seen about grief and trauma in this epidemic. A lot of people right now, if not everyone, is experiencing a trauma right now, has been traumatized by this coronavirus. Psychologists and experts on trauma are saying this because of several things. One being that our lives have been very much changed forever by this virus. People have lost their jobs, people are getting sick or losing loved ones, people are uncertain, feel out of control, which is a big part of trauma. When we don't feel control and when we feel isolated from community, that is when we are most vulnerable to trauma. Yeah, trauma. It's really rough. When a big obstacle comes into your way or you're being attacked somehow, your body responds through fight or flight or through avoidance. Psychologists note that in this epidemic, some people are responding with some fight. What can we do to fight the coronavirus? Whether that means blaming other people for it, calling representatives and demanding they help, going to work and serving others, or washing your hands a lot. These are all fight responses. And then flight responses would be things like staying at home, self quarantining, and the like. And then the avoidance response, once fight and flight are exhausted because, there's only so much control any of us have over this, avoidance is the other response option that our bodies have available. It's sort of like playing dead, being in denial. One psychologist I saw called it allostatic overload. It's this idea that our physiological stress systems are responding to an attack, the stress, anxiety, and the fear, but without any sufficient outlet, especially if you're like sitting at home doing nothing, but your body knows that it's being attacked or is sort of on the defense, knowing that the virus could get you at any moment or get someone you love at any moment, or you're worried about how you're going to make ends meet or pay rent. You're sitting there and your brain is having these responses to that, but without any actual way of doing anything, and so you get allostatic overload, and that's really exhausting. That causes fatigue because your brain and your body are using up all this energy and it's going nowhere, and you get fatigued, you get mentally exhausted, you get physically exhausted. And I want to talk about this because I think it's really important for people to know that that is happening, is potentially happening to you or others in your life. I know that for myself, I've been experiencing a lot of executive dysfunction more than usual, which means that there's a lot of things I want to get done, and I can't seem to get the energy to do them. I've been sleeping a lot longer than normal. I haven't been cleaning as much as I should be, especially given the fact that, cleaning can help. I haven't been answering emails and asks on Tumblr as much as I want to be doing because it's just really hard to find the energy. And I've been feeling very guilty about that. And so learning that part of the reason I'm having these troubles is that my body is fatigued and my brain is fatigued from what's happening has been sort of, it hasn't solved it, but it's just nice to be able to name that and know that it's not my fault. And if you're experiencing something like that, it's not your fault. It's a normal thing. And there are some ways to sort of, once you acknowledge it, you acknowledge the trauma that's happening to you and how it's exhausting your body. And you also acknowledge the grief that is happening to you. It can help us, one, avoid feeling guilty and ashamed about it, and two, find some things that we can do to help with it. And so I'm going to link an article that you might have seen. I feel like I've seen it passed around on social media a lot, which I'm really glad about because it's a really helpful article. Let me see really quick who wrote it. LOL. That discomfort you're feeling is grief. It's by someone named Scott Burinado. Probably said that wrong. I'm sorry, Scott. Um, in it, the author shares some of their interview with someone named David Kessler, who is sort of a grief expert. He has written on grief. He is the founder of grief.com. And Kessler in this interview talks about how what we are feeling right now, there's trauma and there's grief. There's grief because we are experiencing loss, which is what grief is about. We've lost our sense of normalcy, a lot of us, and we've also lost connection to meaningful communities, since we have to keep apart from everyone else. There's a lot of grief there. There's also something he called anticipatory grief. There's the grief of things that are yet to come, but we know are coming, and we're experiencing the grief now. We know that people close to us might die. We know that our communities will never be the same, that people will be missing next time we're able to gather. There's the anticipatory grief of people who have lost their jobs, their source of income, and don't know what to do. They're expecting more loss to come. That grief is really hard. One thing Kessler says is um, that when we understand what's happening to us as grief and we name it as grief, that's sort of our first step. That acceptance of grief, right, is an important step to not fixing it, but sort of dealing with it, right, and living with it, and learning what it means to have that grief as part of ourselves now. He also talks about the need to find a balance between giving the grief space, acknowledging the grief and that it's there, and giving it space, talking about it, thinking about it, but also not wallowing in it. There's got to be a balance between giving it space and acknowledging that it's not all that's happening right now, that we need to have some hope for the future as well, that there needs to be some light and some joy, and acknowledgement and gratitude of what we do have, even in the midst of this tremendous loss that so many of us are experiencing. So, yeah, I'm just going to read a little bit of the article that I thought was really helpful for this idea. So, this is Kessler talking. Let's go back to anticipatory grief. Unhealthy anticipatory grief is really anxiety. Our mind begins to show us images. We see the worst scenarios. That's our minds being protective. Our goal is not to ignore those images or try to make them go away. Your mind won't let you do that, and it can be painful to try to force it. The goal is to find balance in the things you are thinking. If you feel the worst image taking shape, make yourself also think of the best image. We all get a little sick and the world continues. Not everyone I love dies. Maybe no one does because we're all taking the right steps. Neither scenario should be ignored, but neither should dominate either. I think that's really helpful, for me at least, because I don't know about y'all, but the sort of hope and optimism I am feeling sometimes, in this sort of balance between the worst and the best case scenarios. When I feel when I'm imagining those best case scenarios where things turn out okay, I feel kind of guilty about it. I feel like I shouldn't let myself entertain that because people are going to get hurt by this, are have already died. Um, but he's saying that no, it's healthy to have those feelings, and we have to, in order to keep going. We have to allow ourselves to have that hope, and see those best case options, while also not shoving away the grief and shoving away these worst case scenarios. We have to give them their place too. And one thing he also talks about is life after grief. That in the midst of this grief and then after it, we're going to continue to look for meaning. Not necessarily the cause for why it's happening, but sort of meaning for what good can be drawn from it. He's not saying that this virus is good after, like, since we can find some good things in the midst of the grief and the trauma, then it was good that it happened at all. I don't think he's saying that, but he is saying there are some good things that people are doing even in the midst of this crisis. My immediate thought is the stuff that churches and other groups are posting online, the live streams of churches that are really far away from me. I have two home churches that are very far away from me. I am here in Atlanta, Georgia. My two home churches are over in Alabama and then up in Louisville. And so I haven't been able to go to my home churches. I haven't yet found a new home church here. And so I've been feeling isolated before this epidemic happened. And now that those churches have moved their services online, I'm able to connect to them in a way that I couldn't before. I've even participated in them. I sent in sort of like little reflection video to one of them that they posted in part of the service last Sunday. And at the other one, I'm going to be preaching on Palm Sunday. I'll record myself preaching and then they'll post it during the online worship. And that's really a great comfort to me and a connection for me that is happening in the midst of this isolation and uncertainty that is so meaningful and nourishing to me. So I would love to hear what y'all have found to be nourishing, the meaning you have found in the midst of the uncertainty. I'd love to hear about it. And I'm going to close this with a poem that I've been praying with and thinking about a lot in this time because it relates to Kessler's idea about balancing the worst case scenario with the best, balancing your anxiety and your hope. It's called The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice. Meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond.